Hello and welcome back to On Air with Dr. Pete. I'm your host, Dr. Pete Economo, and happy to have you back here today because, as you know, we always have amazing stories. And I often speak about living in the moment and simply making the best of what you're doing in your life. And our guest today is no stranger to that philosophy. David McNally has spent his life exploring one big idea. What is human potential? What's possible for all of us, no matter where we begin? As a Hall of Fame speaker and best-selling author, he's inspired audiences all around the world to aim higher and to live with purpose. But his insights aren't just professional, they're deeply personal because David has faced significant loss and overcome serious health challenges, experiences that have only strengthened his belief in resilience of the human spirit. How beautiful is that? So we are diving into what it means to stay engaged, find purpose, and keep growing at any stage of your life. David, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, what a pleasure, Dr. Pete. Thank you for this invitation.
It is my pleasure. So tell us a bit about your background for listeners that are new to you.
No, well, first of all, I think your audience would be interested in the fact that I was born in London, England. So that's where I began my life. My parents emigrated to Australia when I was 9 years of age. So I spent my formative years in Australia, got married in Australia to an Australian woman, and I have lived now in Minneapolis, Minnesota since 1980. So I've spent now over half of my life in the United States. So that's my sort of biography, if you like, in terms of
In
where
terms
I've
of
lived throughout the
geography.
world. Yes, in geography. But I've also worked around the world. I've lived in South Africa. I've spoken all over the world. So I feel like I'm a citizen of the world, if you like.
It certainly sounds like it. You've been around the globe. I'm curious, and we'll get to maybe how you landed in Minnesota, but what sparked your passion at first, to help people discover their purpose?
Well, when I was a young man, I was a very ambitious young man, but I think that's pretty common to people who are the children of immigrants, wherever
Yes.
you are in the world. But they've immigrated to get a better life, and so I was the oldest child, and I inherited that ambition. So I wanted to be successful.
Hmm.
And success to me meant, acquiring things at that stage of my life.
Sure, sure.
So I went on that track, and I was at a conference when I heard two speakers who were then known as motivational speakers. Now I'm now in my 20s, but they
Yes.
have one of them is particularly well known because his name is Zig Ziglar.
Sure.
And he became very famous throughout the world as a key motivational speaker. And
Yes.
listening to Zig Ziglar, I realized that there were so many possibilities that I hadn't even thought about for my life. And I got very, very excited about that and decided that perhaps one day that is a track that I would love to move towards.
Where was that? Where was that? Is that a conference? But where was that in the world? As a
The conference was in my hometown of Adelaide. I
uh,
hadn't left
okay.
Australia, Adelaide,
Yeah.
South Australia. That's where he came. I was only 24 years of age at that time, just newly
Amazing.
married. Just he took me out of my seat, and I went to a whole new level listening to him.
Hmm.
That led me on a journey of discovery, looking at all the motivational, inspirational resources that were out there. And in a way, the whole field of human potential was in its infancy.
Sure.
Not that throughout history people haven't talked about human potential, but in regards to the way it is known today, it was in its infancy.
Because
I
this
was
was,
there.
I'm sorry, this was in the 60s, probably, right? If I'm doing
Yeah, it
my
was in the
math.
60s. Yeah, it was in
Wow.
the
Yeah. So
60s.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's really helpful to put
So,
into context. So go ahead.
yeah, no, hey, I'm an older dude, Dr. Pete now. I've been,
I was doing the math because I know you're going to be 80 years young, right?
yeah, 80, I'm going to be 80 in August, which is
Amazing.
absolutely amazing. So I've been around over 50 years involved in this work,
Amazing.
which has made me realize that needing a sense of purpose never goes away.
Ever.
It's there for all of your life.
Well, this is why I think you focus on seniors. So I wonder maybe you'll tell us why do you focus on seniors now?
Because I am one. and I am and I'm relevant. So
Yes.
in the world of speaking or leadership development, the world that I have been in, one of the key factors that's always very important, really, and it's just pertains to your show as well. It's who's listening, and whoever is listening to you is listening because what your show is relevant to them.
Of course.
So I had to make a decision about 3 or 4 years ago out of adversity, which we'll probably talk about in a moment,
Yes.
where I then wanted to pivot to
Yeah.
spend the rest of my life and the work I wanted to do. And I realized that where I was relevant were people of my age, people who were
Yes.
seniors. I like to call them elders, people
Yes.
who are still alive. But as the title of my new book suggests, our mission on earth isn't finished
That's right.
because the creative spirit within us only expires when we expire.
I wanted to give that quote to the readers. I love that.
Sorry,
Because
I jumped
I
ahead
love
again.
you jumped ahead because you're just so brilliant, and I always like to say elders are, or wise folk, the wisdom. And so you were quoted where you identify that age is just a chronological fact, not an indictment, and you have learned, quote, the creative spirit within you expires only when you expire. So I that's just so beautiful.
Well, thank you. And it comes out of course, experience and the desire to keep living and living fully and stay engaged in life. Too many people just exist.
Yeah.
Retirement is a false goal. To
Yeah.
retire is so disappointing for so many
Yes.
people.
Yes.
They get to that retirement, they believe that they're going to have a life of leisure and relaxing and
Yes.
drinking martinis and going on cruises, and they find after 6 months or a year that there's an emptiness
Yeah.
within them and they need to fill that up. So what are they going to fill it up with? And that's what I love to talk about now.
I love that. Filling up your cup. Wait, you said that there was, I think I missed this, something about academia or some sort of thing that you changed from, or some profession that you changed from one to the other. Is that what I heard you say just a moment ago?
Well, I had spent my life or my career in the whole field of leadership development and
Yes.
employee motivation.
Got
And
it.
what happened was that I've had two wives in my life, two wonderful women,
Mm-hmm.
both of whom have passed away. My first wife died when she was 57 from ovarian cancer. This was the mother of my five children. I had the great fortune a few years later to meet another wonderful woman who I was with for 16 years. Only six of them married. We got married at the age of 70, believe it or not.
I love it.
Romance never dies either. You
Yes.
always have those feelings.
Sure.
But unfortunately, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So
Uh,
she passed away about 3 years ago. And at that time, I had to make a decision after the grief. You can't avoid the grief, no
you
matter
cannot
how
avoid it.
positive you are.
That's right.
You still have the grief. So I was grieving, but I said, I don't want to be put out to pasture. I want to still do things. So I had written my new book, and then I said, well, do I want to go back to what I was doing? No,
Yeah.
there are so many young, talented, wonderful speakers. So as I mentioned a little earlier, I said, okay, where would be an audience that would see what you are now saying as relevant? So what
Yes.
I took all the things that I've developed
Mm,
over the years and now applied them to the whole notion of vital aging. So
mhm.
that was the pivot that I made.
I love that's really beautiful. So I know you have a morning routine that you've done for 40 or more years every morning. What is that ritual?
Well, my ritual is always to prepare myself mentally for the day.
Yeah.
And I feel that that is so critical. So I journal every morning, but there's an objective in that journal. And that is the fact that I feel that many of us, and in my conversations, I realize I'm not alone. Things happen in the night. The thoughts happen in the night. Many of them are often negative. worry thoughts. I like to call them bully thoughts, thoughts that
Yeah.
want to bully us, right? And so my journaling in the morning and my reading is all about documenting these thoughts in some way and moving through them.
Yes.
Allowing them, the process to allow them, not fight them. They are what they are, but
Absolutely.
they're only thoughts, right?
Yes.
And then start to read things that align me with how I want to experience my day. How do I experience it fully and
Yes.
engage fully? And where can I contribute today? So that prepares me to move forward in the best way that I possibly can.
That is so beautiful. In cognitive behavioral therapy, we sometimes allow clients that are struggling with worry and anxiety for those bully thoughts to take a couple minutes and just say them out loud in the mirror, in the morning or something like that. And so I love that you take the opportunity to journal them. It's really, really effective strategy to not be bullied by those bully thoughts.
Yes, and it's amazing when you go back in your journal and you realize how many of them are repetitive
Yes.
and you have to continue to move through them.
You have to move through them. And I'm sure your children and grandchildren really benefit from all of that. So I know that you said you have 5 children, you have 4 grandchildren, and that
Yes.
being involved in the lives of young people is one of the life, great existences, one of your main purposes. I would love to hear how your grandkids and those around you keep you young.
Well, first of all, involvement with them. I had the great privilege to have a very good relationship with all of my 5 children,
Beautiful.
which is, I know not what everybody does have. So I have a good relationship. We communicate very well. I, I feel as we get older, when you talked about purpose a little previously, that one of our key purposes for us as elders is to encourage the dreams of the young.
Yes.
That is what we're about, or can be about. That is so powerful in terms of contributing to the world as we get older. So, in regards to my own children, obviously, you never stop being a parent. My oldest
Never.
child now is 52 years of age. She's an executive at an airline company. But every morning she calls me on her way to work and we dialogue. And obviously, we talk about personal things, but she also shares with me challenges at work, processes things with me because of the fact that I have a lot of experience in that area. But that happens with all of my children. We're able to really sort of support each other, and they are very protective of me. So it's very much a win-win in our relationships.
That's it's important. And are they all over the world and global passports like you have?
No, not as much as me, but I know I'm the great privilege. I have 4 of them in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities area, and
Wonderful.
one in North Carolina. So yeah, we're very close to each other.
I love that. How did you land in Minnesota? Is there a story behind that?
Well, yes, because when I began in this business, when I was at the age of 30,
Yeah.
I did not have any of my own material. I hadn't written anything, I hadn't
Uh,
developed anything. So I was looking for an organization that I could join who had developed the material, like leadership programs and management and sales training programs. And I found a company in Minnesota. So friends.
amazing. Yeah.
And that's how it all began. I became their Australian franchisee. And after 5 years, they loved the work I was doing there. We became very successful in Australia and asked me to come and would I join them here in the United States, which of course ended up being Minneapolis. It didn't work out, interestingly enough, with them. I left and then I started my own business here in Minneapolis.
Isn't life beautiful? You come for one thing and you find another.
Exactly.
Yes. And so, speaking of finding another, if someone's listening and someone wants to rediscover their purpose later in life or at a major life transition, how could someone do that?
One of the best ways to do that, Dr. Pete, is to reframe it.
Yes.
Reframe this in a different way that makes it much more tangible, right? And so the way I endeavor to work with people in this area is to simply say, look, let's go to a very, very high level. And this is sometimes very hard to grasp, but each human being is a member of the march of humanity. Humanity moves forward, always moving forward. It's always
Mm,
progressing. We are a part of that march, and human beings
mm,
contribute to that march in their own individual way.
yes.
So when we look at it in that way, rather than say, what is my individual purpose, ask myself, what is it that I can contribute to the world?
Hmm.
What are my gifts and talents? What am I passionate about? What causes do I believe in? And this is especially true as we get older, or if I'm in the middle of my career, what sort of work do I feel is very, very valuable that I
Mm.
would love to apply my gifts and talents. And when we figure that out, when we figure out where we want to contribute and where we feel we would be more satisfied and fulfilled, that really is the key to finding our individual purpose.
So there's definitely somebody listening who just heard what you said and they're like, there is no way humankind is progressing right now in 2026. They feel stuck. They feel the world is on fire. What would you say to them?
Yes, and I would say that's a perfectly understandable thought system.
Yes.
And many people get stuck in a whole frame of mind of ain't it awful, right?
Yeah.
That there are many conversations going on around the world about
Yes.
ain't it awful. And I think one of the evidence of that is simply the fact that through that we are inundated with negative news,
Yes.
social media, all of that, we're just the negative stuff is being implanted in us consistently. There is another reality, however, and that reality is that there is many amazing things that are going on in the world.
Yes.
Amazing. Life is also amazing if we shift our focus from ain't it awful to isn't that amazing. But what happens to us is that we take so much for granted. So much for granted. I always love to tell a story of my grandson when he was one of my grandsons when he was 13 years of age. Gave me a call and said, "Granddad, I need to see you." I
Mm.
said, "Evan, that sounds pretty serious." And he said, "Yes, it is." So he came over to see me. He lived near me. We sat around the dining room table and he said, "I got a problem." I said, "What's your problem?" He said, "It's mom." Well,
Hmm.
mom is my daughter. I said, what's going on with mom? And he said, she won't let me have a cell phone.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, why is that a problem? Granted, all my friends have cell phones.
Yeah.
What do you think? So I say to myself, I'm going to decide to support my daughter or my grandson. I knew what I was going to do, support my daughter. So I say to him, Evan, I think you are a bit young to have a cell phone. And he
Hmm.
says to me, Dr. Pete, he says, well, how old were you when you had your first cell phone? And I said, 50. He had no idea that cell phones did not exist at
Isn't that
one point.
wild? Yeah.
Yeah. And now when I speak to an audience, so there could be 100 people in the room, and many of them now are 60 plus. I ask people to put their hands up if they don't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
No one puts their hands up.
Nobody.
No one,
You
right?
know, it's funny, David. I just recently a client was talking about how they're a loner and that they want to kind of be alone and that recharge their battery. And so I asked them to like, what do they do? And so during that, they're like scrolling a little bit or on YouTube. And I said, what do you think someone that was a loner did 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? You know, what did they actually do to be alone versus like you think you're recharging, but to your point, nobody in that room that you were speaking to doesn't have a cell phone.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
Which is amazing. The things we take for granted.
Yes.
Being from Australia, people often say to me, "Oh my gosh, I've always wanted to go to Australia." And I say, "Well, why don't you?" And then they say,
Yeah.
How long is the flight
Right.
between?" I say 15 hours from LA to Sydney, and they go, "Oh, I could never spend 15 hours on a plane." And I say, "Hey, 150 years ago, it took you 3 months to get to Australia, and you
That's
had
right.
a 50-50 chance of
Of
dying on the
making it.
way."
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
there's
perspective.
so many
Perspective. Perspective.
perspective,
Yeah.
Exactly. And all the evidence, however, the research out of Harvard, some of the most brilliant researchers and scientists, tell us that the world, for example, has never been as peaceful as it is today. And
Yeah,
you go, I can't believe that.
I
I
know.
can't,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's
yeah.
true
It is
because
true.
we've
Yeah,
focused just on the news. Yeah.
yeah. So tell me, I know you're a best-selling author. I think you're recently published your fifth book.
Yes,
So maybe
correct.
you tell us about that, or
Yeah, no. Well, my first book that I wrote was called "Even Eagles Need a Push: Learning to Soar in a Changing World." That was a book that put me on the map, and I started to establish my brand and notoriety as a speaker. My latest book, called "If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished," is
hmm,
a book about helping people who are 60 plus realize that there is more to life, that if they want to live fully and be engaged in life, there's still lots of wonderful things they can accomplish. And I think the most important thing at this time of life and that time of life is to reorientate ourselves
hmm,
towards what is my life about. And as we get older, I believe as we leave being ambitious about our career, we need to become ambitious about discovering who we really are. To be ambitious about growing emotionally and spiritually in terms of just being a human being. And of course, at the same time, as we discovered earlier, how do we contribute now?
yeah.
How do we find ways to serve a worthy purpose and live a life of meaning? And that's what the new book is about.
I love it. I mean, it's really just giving purpose and motivation to folks. I know. I'm assuming this links to this award-winning documentary, "The Power or Purpose."
Yeah, The Power of Purpose, which was
Yeah,
the first big production I did.
I love it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we want to tell the listeners about that. Just
Yes, I'd love to because it's a very powerful story.
yeah.
It transformed my life. The Power of Purpose is based on the story of a young Canadian boy who, in 1980, so quite some time ago now, ran the greatest marathon ever. He was a cancer victim. He had lost his leg to cancer, and he ran 3,339 miles across Canada on a prosthetic device and one leg, nearly a marathon a day, to raise money to fight cancer. It was an extraordinary story. He aligned the whole nation of Canada behind this story. He was being shown on television all over the world. His name was Terry Fox. Today, the Terry Fox Foundation still runs every year in his honor and has raised now, Dr. Pete, over $1 billion for cancer research. It's the most amazing story. When I read his story, I said to myself, what a powerful inspirational film that would make. I'd
Yes.
never made a film in my life before. I was looking for a way to serve my own purpose, and that became the contribution that I felt I could make. So The Power of Purpose came out in 1984, is still used, is still seen after all of these years. It was narrated by Christopher Plummer,
Oh yeah.
and the foundation over many years had used it at that time as their vehicle for raising money.
That
So
is
very
yeah.
powerful movie.
Yeah, so we'll have links to all of that. I mean, really such inspiring work, David, and your career, and that it is not even close to over. There's no such thing as retirement, and your creative spirit expires when you expire, right? You are
It's
living
not
that.
it's refirement, not retirement. That's what it's about.
What a better way to end the show. It's refirement, not retirement. That's all
Yes.
amazing. Yeah. So where could I know there's gonna be a lot of listeners that want to follow along on all this amazing work that you're doing and the journey that you're on. Where can they find you best?
Yes, my website, very straightforward, David McNally, DavidMcNally.com. My website's very comprehensive. All of my books are available on Amazon. My website will tell them how to get in contact with me if they want to ask a question or talk about engaging me as a speaker, if they have a community that they feel this message would be relevant to. So, yeah, it's all there and love to speak with them.
davidmcnally.com. We find everything there. Thank you again for being here, David. And for those listening at home, thank you for listening. We'll see you back here next week. And until then, spread a little kindness and stay well.